The coffee on my table was lukewarm. I'd poured it an hour ago, telling myself I'd only sit down for a minute before making the call. But that minute had turned into a staring contest with the phone lying just a few inches away. It wasn't. Like I'd never called my parents for help before I had. But each time, there was that unspoken exchange rate. I'd get what I needed, but I'd pay in guilt, in side comments, in the subtle but unmistakable feeling that I was a burden. The twins were playing in the living room, their little voices drifting in and out like background music. Every so often I'd hear a squeal of laughter, a toy clattering to the floor. It made the room feel warmer. It also made the stakes of this call heavier. I picked up the phone, put it back down, picked it up again. My fingers tapped against the mug, creating this irritating rhythm that matched the ticking of the wall clock. It felt like the clock was mocking me. Every tick was a reminder that surgery day wasn't moving. And neither was my courage. The thing about calling my parents was that the actual ask wasn't the worst part. It was everything after. The pause before they answered. The tone in my mom's voice, carefully balanced between surprise and mild inconvenience. My dad's silence in the background, like he was doing me a favor just by existing during the conversation. I glanced toward the window. Outside, the street was still damp from last night's rain, the pavement shining under a thin strip of sunlight. The world looked peaceful, a sharp contrast to the knot in my stomach. Finally, I pressed call. The ringing seemed to last longer than it should have. And when my mom picked up, her voice was bright, almost too bright. "Hi, sweetheart. Everything okay?" That was her default greeting, a mix of curiosity and suspicion, like I only called if something was wrong. "Yeah, everything's fine," I said, lying out of habit. I need to ask you something." A pause. I could hear dishes clinking in the background. Okay. I explained about the surgery, that it wasn't optional that I'd be under. For a while, that I'd need someone to watch the twins. I kept my tone light, like I was asking for a cup of sugar instead of literal childcare during a medical procedure. Her arms were steady at first, but then came the sigh. Not a dramatic sigh, just the kind that slips out before someone says something they think is reasonable, but is actually disappointing. "Well, I guess we could," she said slowly. "When is it?" the way she asked. "Not, of course. We'll be there. But when is this thing that's about to inconvenience me?" Made me want to shrink into the chair. I told her the date. Another pause. "That's a Saturday," she said. "I know," I replied. I could almost hear her mental calendar pages flipping. "Well, we'll see what we can do." "We'll see." Two words that sound harmless until you've heard them enough to know they're code for "don't count on it." When we hung up, I sat back, letting the silence of the kitchen settle in. The coffee was cold now. I took a sip anyway, just to have something to do. I wanted to believe they'd show up. But deep down, I already knew I'd have to prepare for the possibility that they wouldn't. And somehow, that thought didn't even surprise me anymore. It took them 3 days to call me back. 3 days of me checking my phone every hour. Pretending. I wasn't checking my phone every hour. Every time the screen lit up, I'd get that little jolt of adrenaline, only to see it was a delivery notification, or my friend sending me a meme at 2 a.m. when my mom finally called. Her voice had that familiar, overly casual tone, like she wanted to sound relaxed, but I could hear the edge underneath. "So, I talked to your father," she began. "We can do it." I almost said thank you right there, just to get it over with. But before I could, she kept going. "It's just..." She drew the words out like she was unwrapping something delicate. "We'll need to leave by late afternoon. We've got plans in the evening. So it'd be great if you could be back before then." I felt my jaw tighten. "I'll be in surgery," I reminded her. "I don't really control the timing. I know, sweetheart. I'm just saying. If it runs late, maybe you could arrange for someone else to come by and take over? We're happy to help. But we do have lives, you know. We do have lives." I swallowed the first response that came to mind. Something sharp. Something I'd regret. Instead, I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Right, I'll figure it out." My dad's voice came in faintly from the background, as if he wasn't talking to me, but about me. "Just one day. not the end of the world. Funny thing is, he was right. It wasn't the end of the world, but it was the end of that small, fragile hope that maybe this time would be different. I flashed back to the summer when the twins were born. I'd asked if they could come stay for a week, just to help me find my footing. They came for one afternoon. My mom spent most of it reorganizing my pantry instead of holding the babies. My dad watched TV in the living room. When they left, she told me, "We'd love to stay longer, but you've got this handled, don't." That memory hit me like static in my chest. Brought myself back to the present, gripping the phone tighter. "So, we'll see you that morning," my mom concluded. "But remember, we can't be late for our thing." Our thing. That's what she called it. Not even worth naming. I imagined it was some dinner or outing that could have been moved. But then again, maybe that was the point. I wasn't the priority. When we hung up, I stayed at the table for a long time, staring at the grain in the wood. The twins were napping now, the house wrapped in that rare, hushed stillness. I thought about calling a backup sitter just in case. My stomach tightened at the thought that I even had to. This was the yes I'd been waiting for, but somehow, it felt like another kind of no. It was exactly a week before the surgery when my phone rang. I was folding laundry, the kind of slow, mindless folding you do when you're trying not to think about the thing you're actually thinking about. The twins were in the corner building some kind of blanket fort, laughing at inside jokes only 4-year-olds could understand. When I saw Mom on the screen, I actually smiled. I thought maybe she was calling to check in, to reassure me they'd be there, maybe even to say she'd cleared the whole day for me. The call started with an unusual burst of energy. "Guess what?" she said. I could hear it in her voice, that high-pitched, sugar-sweet excitement she reserved for something she was personally thrilled about. "What?" I asked, still tucking the last towel into the stack. "Fleetwood Mac, they're coming to town. Next Saturday night." I froze, one hand still pressed to the warm fabric. "Next Saturday night," I repeated slowly, because my brain needed a second to process that the date she'd just said was the same date I'd circled in red on the kitchen calendar. Can you believe it? I mean, they hardly ever tour anymore. She laughed like it was fate, like the universe had handed her this gift. "So, what about the twins?" The words came out quieter than I meant. "Oh, honey, we'll have to skip watching them this time. I mean, you understand, right? It's Fleetwood Mac." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity, skip watching my kids so they could go hear Landslide live. But my chest felt tight and the humor caught in my throat. "The surgery isn't optional," I said. I know, she replied, breezy. "But you'll figure something out. You're resourceful." There it was. Not "will help you figure it out," just "you will." Like this was a puzzle I'd chosen for fun, not a crisis I'd been forced into. The twins' laughter from the other room suddenly sounded far away, muffled under the ringing in my ears. I pictured the sterile hospital room, the fluorescent lights, the beeping machines, and my parents in a stadium, swaying to music while I was lying on an operating table. I didn't say much after that. I think I mumbled something like, "Right, okay," just to end the call before my voice betrayed me after I hung up. I stood there in the middle of the living room, phone in one hand, a half-folded towel in the other, the clock ticking too. Loudly again. The blanket fort in the corner looked impossibly small. This was more than a scheduling conflict. This was a choice. I'd just learned what they'd choose every time. 2 days after the Fleetwood Mac call, I decided to try one. More time. Not to guilt them, not to beg, just to see if maybe they'd reconsider once they'd had a chance to think about what they were actually choosing. I told myself it was worth one more conversation. The twins were down for their nap. Their bedroom door cracked just enough for me to hear the gentle hum of their white noise machine. I sat at the kitchen table again, that same mug from before now filled with fresh coffee. I knew I wouldn't finish. My thumb hovered over the call button longer than I'd like to admit. When my mom picked up, she sounded distracted, her voice faint over some kind of background chatter. I pictured her walking through a store, flipping through racks of clothes. I got straight to the point. "Mom, I really need you that day. There's There's no one else who can take the twins. And I can't exactly reschedule surgery." She let out this little laugh, not a full one, just a short burst of air through her nose. "You're such a pain sometimes, you know that?" It was meant like a joke, I think. But it landed like a punch, a pain. Like I was an annoying reminder. On her to-do list, like my entire medical situation was just another inconvenience wedged between her errands and her concert tickets. For a second, I couldn't even respond. I stared at the sunlight hitting the table, turning the wood grain into sharp, golden lines. My mind flicked back, uninvited, to being 12 years old and asking her to come to my school's choir performance. I'd been so proud holding the solo part I'd practiced for weeks. She told me she'd try, but she had a lot going on. She never made it, and when I asked her about it later, she just said, "You can't expect me to be everywhere all the time. Don't be such a pain." I didn't have the words for it then, but I do now. It was a small cut that never really healed. And now she'd found the exact spot to press. I took a breath, forcing my voice steady. "It's not about being a pain. It's about needing help. Your grandkids need help." She sighed, long and slow, like she was being forced into a conversation. "She didn't sign up for. I know, sweetheart. But you're good at figuring these things out. You always have been." We hung up shortly after, but her voice stuck to me like static, following me around the kitchen, down the hall, into the twins' room. When I went to check on them, they were tangled up in their blankets, breathing deep, their tiny hands curled into fists. I brushed a curl from my daughter's forehead and thought, "I will never make you feel like a pain for needing me." The morning after that last call, I woke up with the weight of a countdown in my chest. Surgery was in 6 days. 6 days to figure out who would take care of the twins while I was unconscious on a hospital table. I sat at my desk with my phone in one hand and a notepad in the other, jotting down every possible name I could think of. Friends, neighbors, parents from the twins' preschool. People I hadn't spoken to in months suddenly became potential lifelines. The first 3 calls went to voicemail. The 4th one was answered, but ended with, "I'd love to, but will be out of town that weekend." The 5th, vague, "I'll let you know," which, let's be honest, y'all know means no. Every time I hung up, the sound of the dial tone seemed to echo a little longer, like the silence after someone walks out of a room. The twins were coloring at the kitchen table, their crayons making that soft, waxy sound on paper. My son looked up at me and said, "Why do you look sad?" I forced a smile, just thinking about stuff. He accepted that answer because he's 4, but the guilt of lying to him added another brick to the pile on my chest. By late afternoon, I was pacing the living room, calling people I hadn't talked to since high school. It was ridiculous, but the fear of having no one to watch my kids was louder than my pride. Then I called Emily. Emily was a friend from work. It's the kind of person who remembered birthdays and sent you soup when you had the flu. I almost didn't call her because she'd already done so much for me in the past. But when she picked up and I explained, she didn't even hesitate. "Of course," she said. "I'll take them for as long as you need. Don't even worry about it." It was like someone had cracked a window in a suffocating room. My knees felt a little weak from the sudden release of tension. "Are you sure?" I asked, because apparently my brain couldn't accept good news without interrogating it. She laughed. "Yes, I'm sure. And you should focus on your surgery, not this." After we hung up, I sat on the couch and just breathed. But even in that relief, there was a thread of bitterness winding through me. It wasn't just that my parents had said no, it was that someone with no obligation to me had stepped in where they wouldn't. That night, as I packed the twins' overnight bag for Emily's place, I caught myself tucking in their favorite, stuffed animals, labeling snack containers, writing out bedtime routines. It wasn't just preparation, it was the quiet knowledge that I trusted this friend more than I trusted my own parents with my children. The alarm went off before the sun even thought about rising. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, the faint glow from the streetlight outside slipping through the blinds. My body felt heavy, like it already knew it was about to be cut open. The twins padded into my room in their pajamas, still rubbing sleep from their eyes. I pulled them close, inhaling the faint smell of their shampoo from last night's bath. I told myself to keep my voice light, to not let them see the knot of nerves in my chest. Emily arrived just after 6. She came in with that calm, steady smile she always seemed to have, wearing a hoodie and holding 2 travel mugs of coffee, one for me, one for her. "You ready?" she asked softly. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. The twins hugged me goodbye, my son asking if I'd be all fixed when I got home. I said yes, because kids deserve answers that make the world feel safe, even if you're not sure yourself. I watched them climb into Emily's car, waving until they turned the corner. The driveway felt colder once they were gone. The taxi ride to the hospital was silent, except for the hum of the engine and the occasional turn signal. The city was still waking up, store lights flickering on, early commuters with coffee cups in hand. When I stepped into the hospital lobby, the smell hit me first. It's that sharp antiseptic tang that makes everything feel too clean, like it's trying to cover up something you shouldn't think about. The receptionist smiled politely, but her eyes didn't linger. I checked in, got my wristband, and followed a nurse down a corridor that seemed to stretch forever under harsh fluorescent lights. In the pre-op room, I changed into the thin hospital gown. The fabric was rough, and the ties in the back never seemed to sit right. I sat on the bed, bare feet dangling, listening to the rhythmic beeping of a monitor in the next room. There was this moment, right before they wheeled me in, where I looked toward the doorway. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me still half expected to see my parents there, standing awkwardly with a paper cup of coffee, saying something like, "You'll be fine." But it was just the nurse. She smiled, and I smiled back. But it wasn't the same as the anesthesiologist adjusted my eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles above me. They were off-white, dotted with tiny pinholes, each one slightly different from the next. I focused on them, counting, till my vision blurred and the edges of the world softened. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took me under was thinking about the concert, about the sound of a crowd cheering while my body lay here, still and silent. When I woke up, the world felt heavy and muffled, like someone had draped a thick blanket over reality. My mouth was dry, my tongue sticking to the roof. The air was cool, but my skin was clammy under the hospital sheets. The first thing I heard was the steady beep of the heart monitor, slow and even. The second was nothing at all. No voices, no laughter, no "Hey, you're awake." I turned my head toward the doorway, the effort making my temples throb. The space outside was quiet, just the faint shuffle of nurses' shoes on linoleum. For some reason, my mind went straight to the image of my parents at the concert, lights flashing, the thrum of bass, the collective cheer of a crowd singing, along to a song everyone knows. I wondered if they were thinking about me at all, or if I'd even crossed their minds between verses. A nurse came in, checking my vitals with the kind of efficiency that comes from years of practice. She asked how I was feeling, and I gave her the standard a little sore answer, because the real answer was too big to unpack with someone who had 12 other patients to check on. She left, and I was alone again. The silence had a texture to it, not peaceful, but hollow. It reminded me of that feeling when you call someone after an argument and they don't pick up. It's that kind of silence that keeps ringing in your ears. I reached for my phone on the bedside table. It's one notification from Emily. It was a photo of the twins in her living room, surrounded by Lego towers and snack crumbs, both of them grinning with that pure, unself-conscious joy kids have. The caption read, "We're all good. Focus on you." I stared at the picture until my eyes blurred. Relief flooded through me, but it was mixed with something sharper, that reminder again, that the people you think you can count on aren't always the ones who actually show up. Hours passed in slow motion. A tray of bland hospital food appeared, barely touched. The afternoon light shifted from white to gold to gray through the half-closed blinds. Still no text, no call, no knock on the door by the time night settled. The beeping monitor and the hum of the air vent felt like the only constants in the room. I closed my eyes, not because I was tired, but because looking at the empty doorway any longer felt like admitting something I wasn't ready to say out loud. They showed up a week later, not the day after surgery, not even the day I got home. A full week. By then, the soreness in my body had dulled to an ache, but the soreness in my chest was something else entirely. I was sitting on the couch with a blanket over my legs. The twins sprawled on the floor with puzzles and snack bowls when I heard the knock. For half a second, my heart jumped, an instinctive flicker of hope. Maybe they'd come to check on me. Maybe they'd finally say, "We should have been there." Instead, they came in laughing. Loudly, Mom went straight for the couch, dropping her purse beside her with a satisfied sigh. Dad hovered near the doorway, still scrolling on his phone. "You should have seen it," she said, eyes lighting up like a teenager's. They opened with the chain. The crowd went wild. I nodded slowly, trying to match the energy. "Sounds like you had fun." "It was amazing," she continued, leaning forward like she was sharing the gospel of rock and roll. "Like the lights, the harmonies, they sound just like they did decades ago." I kept my smile in place, the same one I'd worn during countless family conversations where I wasn't really part of the story. Dad finally looked up from his phone. "We even got shirts," he said, pulling at the hem of the faded black cotton he was wearing. Fleetwood Mac's faces stared back at me from across his chest. No one asked about the surgery, not how it went, not how I was feeling, not a single question about the recovery process. The twins tried to show them their puzzle, but Mom just said, "That's nice, sweetheart," before turning back to tell me about the encore. Apparently, they played Landslide, and everyone cried. I wondered if they noticed the irony. I thought about saying something, about telling them how much it hurt that they weren't there. But the room already felt full of noise that wasn't about me, and I didn't have the energy to fight for space in it, so I just let them talk, let them fill the air with stories about a night I hadn't been part of, while the night I'd lived through, the one in the hospital bed alone, went unmentioned. When they finally left, the house felt quieter than before. The twins returned to their puzzle. I pulled the blanket tighter around myself, the soft fabric suddenly feeling like the only thing between me and the cold air in the room. It didn't happen all at once. I didn't storm off, slam doors, or send a dramatic text. It was slower than that, a kind of quiet unraveling. The morning after their visit, I was making oatmeal for the twins. The smell of cinnamon filled the kitchen, and steam fogged up the small window above the sink. My phone was on the counter, face down. I realized I hadn't even thought about calling them to say thanks for stopping by, not out of spite. Just because there didn't seem to be anything left to say, that's when it hit me. Every time I'd asked them for something important, I'd ended up feeling smaller afterward. Every single time. Flashbacks started bubbling up. The time I'd needed a ride home from college during a snowstorm and was told, "Well, can't you just stay in your dorm until it melts?" The time I called after the twins were born, asking for help with groceries. And Mom said, "Oh, honey, we're already halfway to the cabin." Back then, I'd swallowed it, told myself they were just busy or tired or not the type to show up in big ways. But now, sitting there stirring oatmeal, I realized this wasn't about personality types. It was about priorities, and I couldn't keep making excuses for theirs. That night, after the twins were asleep, I sat on the couch. With my laptop open, I started typing not a letter to them, not an email I'd send, but something for myself, a list. Lines I won't let them cross anymore. I will not beg for their help. I will not downplay my needs so they feel comfortable. I will not let their absence make me feel like I'm too much. By the time I finished, I felt lighter, not happy exactly, but steady, like I'd shifted my weight to a sturdier footing. The next time Mom texted, it was a group photo of her and Dad at a wine tasting. I typed back a polite "looks fun," and that was it. No guilt, no attempt to remind them about me, just letting the distance be what it was. Because here's the thing. You can't keep setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm, especially when they're holding marshmallows. It's been a few months now. The twins are growing faster than I can keep up with. They're into everything. Yesterday, I found them in the kitchen, standing on chairs, trying to make pancakes with half a bag of flour. The mess was outrageous, but the laughter made it worth it. And maybe that's what's changed. I've stopped looking over my shoulder for people who were never going to show up. I've started looking around at what's here. Right now, I still talk to my parents, but the conversations are shallow, safe. Whether updates, new recipes, a passing comment about the twins, they haven't asked about the surgery or how recovery went. And I haven't volunteered, not holding my breath for an apology that isn't coming. Sometimes I wonder if they notice the difference. They can feel the space I've quietly built between us. But then I realize it doesn't really matter. The point isn't whether they notice, it's that I do. Because the truth is, peace doesn't always come from fixing what's broken. Sometimes it comes from putting it down and walking away. I think about the morning I made that call, the dread, the hesitation, the clock ticking in the quiet kitchen. I wish I could go back and tell that version of me, "You're going to be okay. You'll figure it out without them." And I did. Not perfectly, not gracefully. There were moments of panic, nights where I lay awake wondering if I was making the wrong choice by keeping my distance. But the twins still wake up smiling. The bills still get paid. Somehow, I'm lighter than I've been in years. Maybe. Fleetwood Mac played Go Your Own Way that night for them. Funny thing is, I'm finally doing the same.